Hi, everyone. So I'm Dan Katz. And I wanted to share with you 3 things that know you must about data. I had the idea to use the Star Wars characters because when I joined my company as a CDO, Chief Data Officer, I was filled with a new hope. Data was a big buzz, and there was a new hope, which is, as you know, the 4th episode of Star Wars series. Okay, the jokes you have to explain are bad jokes usually. Okay, so this is how it started, and I wanted to share that with you after having been there for like a year and a half. I guess it's the green button. Okay, so what is or what are data? And I found the need to explain that there's a definition which is not necessary, and we'll see that immediately. So data is or are first a plural, okay? It comes from Latin, as you know, and it means given from the verb dare, to give, okay? So data are things that are given, okay? I've highlighted basically the main thing, which basically is information. Data are information. There's a second item which says information in a form suitable for storing and processing by a computer. As you know today, everything is storable and processable by a computer, except maybe smells. So data are everything. You take a picture, you put your name, you take a video, I don't know what you want to do, but everything that impacts your senses is mostly treatable, processable, suitable for storing by a computer. Again, maybe not smell. So really, the data are everything about information. And usage note, although now often used as a singular noun, data is properly a plural, okay? But sometimes, so it's not the data is, but it's the data are. Okay, that was easy because in English, you don't have like many words for the same. You have data and information. In German, you have Daten. Daten is a plural for Datum. Okay, like datum means the date on the agenda. I'll spare you with the translation, but basically it says the same. Jede Art von Information means any sort of information that a computer can treat, can process. Okay, but it usually says also all sorts of information. Then French. So data. In French, I'm sorry, I kept the definitions in the original language, but okay. So the data in French is a plural, so it's les data. It means also facts and things, but this definition, interestingly, comes from 1873. So the word data says hardly used and only in one locution, which is the data and desiderata, which means what you know and what you're looking for in math. So in French, you have this word data, which is like super academical, but actually it means donner, which is the form of to give. And this definition that's the only dictionary where we have this definition. It's a very old dictionary, and it's never been republished. So the word data in French does not exist in a dictionary. What we have is donner. Okay, I'll spare you, it means the same, but it's just that the word data in French, as we hear it and read it every day, does just not exist in the dictionary. What is interesting is that we have another word which does exist in the dictionary, which is big data. So, and that's it. Yeah, the reference is the actual dictionary. So we don't have data, because it's past, it disappeared since the 19th century, but we have big data, which, as you realize, is non-masculine invariable, so it's le big data, whereas data was a plural, okay? And big data means it's a technological domain, so it's nothing to do with the information. It's like you say, geometry. So you have geometry, you have chemistry, and you have big data. So it's a domain, okay? And of course, the official recommendation says use méga données. Méga for big, and données for data. So the English would be translated into Greek, big becomes méga, and the Latin from English data becomes données, translated in French. I'm losing my, Latin, whatever. So we have le big data, and we have l'open data. Open data is also in the French dictionary. And it comes, of course, from English, open and data. OK, sure. And again, they say, so open data, so it's not like geometry, so it's not a discipline. It's not about data information. It's about mise à disposition, meaning to give access to data by a public entity. So, or not even public, not necessarily. So big data is like a science. Open data is the fact of giving access to your data. But data does not exist still. So eventually, the conclusio in Latin is data is information. And maybe we could have spared the whole thing, but thinking about that, we need to understand that data is a new concept. So it's easier to talk about data with a new word, probably, than use information. And by the way, in proper English, you don't say the information are, but you talk about a piece of information, blah, blah. So it's something which is kind of uncountable. So people are not at ease with that, whereas if you say one data, two data. So new IT, and we need to buzz and we need to jargon. So that's why we use those words, specifically in French, where we use a word which comes from English, from Latin, but does not exist in French even. So I wanted to explain that. And also, going further, I want to explain the fact that data is something which reflects an infinite vision of the world. And there's a vertigo here. The vertigo is here. I don't know if you're familiar with that. What do you see? What you see is what we, in math, we call it a fractal. You're familiar with the concept? It's a math function which gives you, at each stage of the evolution of the function, the same aspect of the original function. Okay, I explained that differently. Take the whole picture, okay? You see the laughing cow. The laughing cow has in its earrings showing the laughing cow. Having in its ears the laughing cow, having in its ears. So it's an infinite vision. Clear? Enjoy your cheese. So, in the beginning, God published the book. Sorry, yeah, pretty much this, yeah, that's that. And then we split the book into chapters, and then sentences, and then words, and then, of course, letters, and then what? Bytes. The information technology is the way you treat each and every one of those things, okay? You can have list of books, you can access the chapters, you can access the sentences, you can look through the words, check a sentence, check a letter, and eventually split by byte. If you send me an email, you can't send more than 10 mega. So you're interested not in the content, but in the byte. Now, there's something else which is called the reader. You can also have the list of readers. Okay, who read recently that book? Who took this book? Who knows about the readers? The librarian. Who knows about the librarian if the library is open? Well, the janitor. And who knows if the university is open? Well, the parking valet. Because if the parking is closed, obviously university is closed, and obviously there's no librarian to serve books to the readers who will read the books with many words and sentences and letters. What you see here is a continuum, and it's all about the same information. I don't know if you realize that it's the same thing, it's the same original book, but you're asking yourself different questions about it. You know, there's a book in French which doesn't have the letter E in it, okay? There are people who've never read this book or that book. And if you look for specific information about who has had access to this, you know, you remember the name of the rose. In The Name of the Rose, there was a movie based on a book by an Italian author. Everyone who turned the pages of the book got poisoned by some poison that was on the pages. So you wanted to know who had access to the book. Okay, so each time what you see here, there's a continuum, and you're looking at different aspects of it, but it's always the same information. So this information, the data, changes, and here I wanted to introduce the concept of metonymy, which again, this is my classics. It comes from Greek this time, and it means metonymia instead of. So basically, it's a figure of speech in which the name of the thing is used in place of another, and generally you have that talking about the whole or the part. So you can talk about data when you mean the number of bytes, or you can use data, the name of the people who had access. And since you're in the IT world, basically we're talking about who's read the email, who has had access to the email, who has got the logs, who's got access to the monitoring of the logs, blah, blah, blah. Every time you have this slicing of the same information that you're looking at, but with different angles. So eventually I call it the data, I think it's a quantum metonymy. Sorry for being so academical. Quantum physics is the physics of the light, for instance, the photons. And what's particular about the photons is that every time you look at them, they change because you look at them. And data is the same. If you look at the logs, basically you're logging yourself. So you're adding +1 to the number of logs. So if I tried to test once my campaigns on Google Ads, and I was baffled by the fact that every time I would click on it, I would pay for it. I was like, shit, I'm just testing. But and then my CMS said, yeah, you got +1. I said, no, it's not +1. It's just me, stupid. But you have that. Okay, so it's what I call the quantum metonymy. So now, because it changes, you understand, it changes on who's looking at and what side. Okay. Now, what about big data? And I say, yeah, what? People talk about big data, and again, in French, remember, it's a discipline. Well, there's a song about a bird is a bird, and a big bird is just a big bird. Yeah, except it has a bigger cage, more grain, more noise, and bigger shit. But what I mean is that from a philosophical, you understand me now, perspective, data or big data is the same. There's no difference. It's just you need more stuff behind it. It's more plumbing. Of course, a lot more plumbing, but basically, yeah, nothing has changed. Now, last point I want to make is, of course, the idea of what's behind the data in terms of intellectual improperty. People talk about intellectual property, but I would like to talk about intellectual improperty. I'll let you have a look at this slide, and tell me what you think of it. So this is the best picture of the data I saw, because I didn't take it. And you have here everything you have to know about what is the law and the legalities of data, okay? Why? Because as you see, you can sell snow, and snow does not pertain to anyone. The guy is doing a discount, and it says it could look like this. Okay. Hello, data. So I try to look in the various legal regulations and that I found. Okay, I've done that in French originally, so I took the English European text, so that you can follow. So there's a European directive on the legal protection of databases. Okay, if you take the various legal corpus in most of European countries, you won't find the term data. The term data does not exist as a legal thing, okay? You have real estate, you have contracts, you have brand names, you have patents, you have all sorts of different legal objects, but you hardly have the word data. The only time you have it is in the context of a database. And the idea of a database is what? Is to protect the right of not the owner, but the investor And it's really interesting because you don't have the word data, but you have databases. So it's like data is like a grain of rice. Alone, it's nothing, but in a pack of a ton, it's food. But lawyers struggle with that because either you exist or you don't. The quantity of a human being is a human being. Two human beings are two, but they're still human beings. Here, one, and again, data is a plural, you remember? But one data means nothing, but when you have a base, then it may, permit protection. That's very strange as a concept, okay? Because a contract is a contract. You don't need to have 1,000 of them to be protected, okay? So this is very strange, but that's the only occurrence where data actually appears. And it's also very strange because this directive is currently being reviewed because they think it's useless. So it's interesting. And here, really, what they protect is not the data itself for being a data, it's the effort you put in the protection of it. So if I build a substantial investment, as you can see, in the obtaining, the verification, the presentation of the contents, and with a view also to prevent the extraction. So basically, it's the thickness of the wall outside the data that deserves its protection by law. It's not the content itself. That's very strange, but that really goes to the point. So, I don't know if you're familiar with that, but when we talk about data, lots of people say, yeah, it's my data, I'm the owner, blah, blah, blah. And I want to kill that concept now, once and for all. But to kill that concept, I need to introduce another one, which is called possession. Okay, you're all familiar with ownership, but maybe you're less with possession. Possession is a different concept. So ownership is the legal relationship. You are the owner of your house. Okay, I took the French code because I had it ready. But it's in translation into English. Ownership is the right to enjoy and dispose of things in the most absolute manner. This is what you feel when you own your house, okay? You have your name on the title of document, so you have the certificate wherever you come from, but usually you always have that, so it's a title, so you have a legal relationship to your ownership that proves your ownership. Possession is something different. Possession is a factual relationship. Possession is that actually you have it now. Like, I'm going to do something crazy, I'm going to go away with my computer. It's not mine, but I have it. Okay, I technically have it now. So this is the idea of a factual relationship. I have it. I don't have to show the title. Do you have a title on your computer? Does it somewhere says that you are the legal full owner of the? No, it's just you have it. I can go away with this seat here, and it's possession. Okay, so you have to think of it like two things which are different. And by the way, it does not prevent you from doing things with the computer that you possess. I can use it. I can prevent you from using it because I'm using it. But these two concepts have to be very clear because they are completely different. So possession is a factual relationship. It's the detention. It's the fact that you have it. Okay. And by the way, when you say have, you sometimes, and most of the time, you mean both. I own it and I have it. I have the possession. So where are we? So did you hear anyone say data ownership? The problem is you have heard data ownership because I'm sure people said, yeah, I'm going to have to ask the owner, blah, blah, blah. So you've heard that, and that's really annoying. So I got back to the text, and I found that nowhere in the European legislation you find the word ownership. Nowhere. So you hardly find data, by the way, and because you have databases, but you don't really have data. And here I found data. It's the much talked about GDPR, the General Data Protection Regulation, which is going to be a nightmare for the American companies working in Europe, which is also a nightmare for the European companies working in Europe. But and here's the definition. It says personal data. I say, yeah, okay, maybe I have something here. No, it means the information relating to an individual. They say relating. I mean, relating does not mean I own it, but that's my personal data. Okay, but they don't mean that I own them. Okay, so no one ever meant that there was a data ownership. It's only you misunderstanding it. I'm saying. So I said no data ownership. So I go further, and there's this draft regulation about the free flow of non-personal. So the European Union has done work on the personal data, which is the data relating to individuals, not owned by individuals, remember? And they're working also on non-personal data and the free flow of data in Europe. And here they talk about users, and they mean the natural person using a data storage or other processing services. So you can be a user of non-personal data, you don't have to be the owner. This regulation has been approved and it will come soon as a regulation, but it's not done yet. So I mean there is no data ownership. Again, here we have this directive which came into force last June, so it must have been transposed into national laws. So check each of your countries when you're Europeans. In France, this European directive was translated into French, transposed into French law in June. Okay, so we have now the same text in French. And we talk about trade secrets, the protection of undisclosed know-how and business information. Yeah, you say information, you don't say data. So trade secrets, and they mean information, blah, 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 and then say the person lawfully in control of the information. When you are lawfully in control, do you own it? No, you just have it, or you possess it to keep it secret. So, and then I say, yeah, but that's European, so maybe we go to the US. So I went to the US, and this there's the new law which was enacted at the beginning of the year by American President Donald Trump. And the law also here says, so it's a very long law, but never mind. It's called Clarifying Lawful Overseas Use of Data Act. Basically, that's the way to snatch back people using American companies on foreign servers. That was based on the Microsoft case. We can talk about it. And it says information pertaining to a customer. They don't say owned by a customer. Again. Or within such providers' possession, custody, or control. So we only talk about the control, the access, the custody, nothing about ownership. Okay? So we stop with this one. So when I have my friend from The Economist having a cover page with the world's most valuable resource, I just say, stop it, because it's not a resource. Resources are subject to appropriation. You can own a resource, because basically you own the land, for instance. So I wanted to react to that, but okay, maybe they'll do a special edition after they see my show. It's critical, because if you talk about data in these words, you end up not being able to share the data, and the value of the data is in sharing, okay? So, of course, you're going to object, yeah, what about IP? You know, my data contains IP, so it's protectable, blah, blah, blah. You say, yeah, sure, why not? But it's a different subject. Data is data, and IP is IP. Some data, some information may be relating to something which is subject to protection. Like this here, this book, has lots of logo. Each of the logo is a protected logo as a brand, as a trademark. But the list of them is just treating them as plain information. So basically you have those two concepts colliding sometimes, of having a list of information and some of them being possibly subject to what we call a monopoly. So you can't reuse them, you can't publish them, but when they're packed together, that works. And by the way, you have, in all legal systems, you have the concept of having press reviews where you clip out. You have also poetry books where you do a compounds of poetries, and still you escape from the IP copyright protection, because you do a compilation of works. So it's not IP is not a problem for data generally. Sometimes it has an impact, but then you carve it out. So you don't own your data, so what can you do? It's okay, guys. You know, you don't have the ownership, but still you can protect it. That's a Lucky Luke. It's very difficult to find the English edition of this Lucky Luke, but it's what does it say? Barbed wire on the prairie. You can put barbed wire, and that's it. It's an access thing. Okay, data is about access. It's not about ownership. And you can also do something. You can transact. you can do transactions on the data, even if it's not yours. And by the way, it's always been done, like this man who sold the Eiffel Tower. And that's a true story. And the guy sold it twice. No, it's a real true story. So you don't have to own it to do transactions. Think of it. Okay. So now, still, so you don't own it, but that doesn't mean you can't do much. You know, you can't do anything. So you can do things like protect and transact, and also you can ask yourself some like really like the morning after questions, like what happened? Now here it's what data we're talking about. And whenever you talk about data, some may be sensitive, some may not. Some may be pictures, some may be flat text, some may be numbers. So the what about the data is very important. And these are really the questions that you have to ask yourself all the time. Who collected the data? Who corrected the data? Who modified it? Who deleted? Who transferred? Who accessed? Who monitored the guy accessing? Who monitored the guy monitoring the monitoring of the guy? Who is the question that you ask yourself the morning after, but you have to ask yourself the same question for any relationship with data you have. Where is it stored? Okay, now it's critical. You know, if you have storage in the UK post Brexit, what do you do with your storage? If you're a non-UK company, you take the data away. I mean, I would suggest you do it, because today the situation is not clear. So where is it stored? It's very critical. Is it stored in China? Woohoo! Is it stored in the US? You know, so the data is not nowhere, and the cloud is not nowhere. There's a server, there's a data center somewhere. And then when was the data collected? When was it stored? When was it modified? When was it accessed? Okay, so those 4 questions that you ask yourself in a typical situation, normal situation of a hangover movie, are the questions you should ask yourself about the data. Now, after all that, what can we say about data? I think maybe data is a collective good. Maybe data has to be shared. And maybe we have to work on the concept of a data kibbutz. Okay, I don't know if you're familiar with the concept. It's a collective village that was created in Israel in the beginning of the century, most like the Sofros or Kolkhoz in Russia at the same time. And the idea may be that we need to contribute and share the data in a given environment, in a given sector, in a given field. Bottom line, when you handle, when you do, when you treat, when you manage, when you discuss about data, keep calm and use your brain, because there are many questions attached to it. Okay? Thank you very much.